Julian Burnside QC, high-profile barrister and failed Greens candidate, made the headlines recently as one of those people who like to say words to the effect of, "I am not anti-Semitic, I am just critical of Israel." Of course, this all blew up when Burnside tweeted that, quote, "Israel's treatment of Palestinians looks horribly like the German treatment of the Jews during the Holocaust." This was hugely offensive on many levels and just goes to prove that intelligence and decency and wisdom do not necessarily go together. There is one important reason why I consider Burnside's tweet to be anti-Semitic, and one other reason why it demonstrates an astonishing lack of insight into the way the world works. Firstly, I have spoken about the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism before, but it warrants expanding on now because in the modern world that we live in, it is probably the best way to explain why appalling criticism of Israel can be considered anti-Semitic. Now, whilst there have been a lot of definitions of anti-Semitism in the past, this one is different in that in addition to the couple of sentences that constitutes the definition, it also has 11 additional explanatory notes that expand on and clarify what the authors of the definition intended to convey. This is the modern way of doing things, and it happens frequently with government agencies. Whenever a law or some regulations are drafted, there are explanatory notes added that outline exactly how the original statement is to be interpreted. So in this case, these notes provide specific examples of how unjust and unreasonable treatment of Israel that would not be applied to any other country can indeed be regarded as anti-Semitism. And on this basis, Burnside's tweet does exactly what the IHRA defines as anti-Semitism, that is, equating a contemporary Israeli policy with the Nazis. And furthermore, this is now the third time in the last few years he has done this, so he can't, in all honesty, claim it was an unintended slip-up. The second reason why Burnside's tweet was so insulting is this. In preparing a newspaper article for The Australian, columnist Gerard Henderson sent a message to Burnside asking if he has ever visited Israel and/or Gaza, if he has travelled to the area, and whether he had made contact with the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah. Burnside replied, and take note of, as this admission is the most outrageous part of the story, he said, quote, "No, I haven't visited Israel or Gaza, but I watch the ABC and SBS News. The simple fact is that Israelis kill a lot of Palestinians. Certainly the numbers are nowhere near the number of Jews killed during the Holocaust, but the reasons are substantially the same." End quote. This is simply astounding. Here is a man with 2 university degrees who thinks it is okay to make the most contemptible comments about Israel, and he hasn't even been there. And worse, he gets his information from the ABC and SBS in the naive belief that these 2 media outlets are respectable, fair and balanced on Israel. I am not a QC, I am not a barrister, and I'm not even a lawyer. But this is like me telling a client facing court that it's okay. I've watched a few episodes of Perry Mason and LA Law, so I'm fully informed about your case and I'm right up to date with all the facts and laws. Burnside's tweet was so egregious that even the Greens were embarrassed by it, and that's saying something. They backpedaled so fast that even leader Adam Bant distanced himself from Burnside's tweet. And the Greens themselves have plenty of form for not being fair and objective on Israel. I look at all of this and ask myself, is Burnside anti-Semitic or just a harsh critic of Israel? I have my personal views, but what do you think? This is Alan Freedman for the Australian Jewish Association.